Welcome to Screen Chat, live from the Media Hub on RadRadar.ca. I'm your host, Justin, and with me today we have a very special guest. Welcome to my boy, Tarren. Welcome to the show, bro.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here. Excited,
Yeah,
man.
really happy to have you on. We got Eldin, of course, behind the scenes. Eldin, thank you for being here today. I know you always say you have to be here, so thank you so much for being here. And as you guys know, Screen Chat is all about the latest Marvel movies, DC Comics, Star Wars adaptations, and much, much more. But today we have a very special episode, okay? So had to bring in some backup as Tarren is here. Eldin, of course, is here behind the scenes, and we're going to talk all about Boba Fett. Probably the most popular Star Wars character of all time, I'd say at this point. Like, this guy's just one of the most iconic characters in fiction. And so, thankfully, we were fortunate enough to go to Fan Expo this past weekend. And there was someone there, which we'll get to. And then later on in the show, we're just going to talk about Boba Fett as a whole. Because, again, so popular. He's lasted so many years, generations, and just a lot to talk about for this character. So
yeah, there's definitely a lot of history right there.
Yeah. So this is a long time coming. We want to get you on the show for a bit now. And it does work out that this week we have Eldin here as well. You guys share that same love for Boba Fett. So I'm glad that this worked out.
I've been excited to meet him, man.
Yeah, so we're finally out here. So without further ado, Fan Expo, man. So what happened at Fan Expo?
Well, we go to Fan Expo every year. It's a tradition. It's always fun. Get our trolls in and mess around with some people. But I mean, obviously the main attraction was to go see Tamara Morrison.
Yes, Boba Fett himself.
Boba Fett, Jango Fett, Captain Rex, Commander Cody, Echo 5's Heavy. Yeah, he's a legend, man. It was really awesome to meet him. Huge moment for me, as you know. Like, I've been wanting to meet him for like my entire life.
Yeah,
so
amen.
That was really big. Unfortunately, Eldin missed out, but yeah, just getting to talk to him. I wish I had more time. Like, I feel like I could have talked to Tamara Morrison for the entire day.
Yeah, literally.
He was actually just like cool to talk to. I mean, you've met some other like celebrities and stuff. You know how some people can be like kind of standoffish, but he was actually just like really cool, really fun to talk to.
Yeah, man. It was so cool to see like you finally interact with him, just because like being your friend my whole life, I know how much like Boba Fett means to you, like literally your favorite character ever. And obviously Tamara Morrison's the guy behind the mask. So this was awesome, bro. Like, I was just happy to be there. It was actually like great vibes, bro. Those are some great photos there too, all smiles, and yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I thought that like like you said, we've been to a lot of cons before, so this one we actually we pulled up right at opening as well. So we didn't even have to wait in line for that long, and he was just there right from the start.
Yeah,
which
is really cool. A lot of people they take their time. They don't show up until like halfway through the show. Even sometimes you got the whole lineup just standing there for like a couple hours just waiting for them to show up. He was right there at the beginning, man. He loves his fans. He loves his fans.
Yeah, it was pretty cool too, because obviously we do got some signed pops here as well. Definitely just show that off quickly. I got this one signed, Jetpack Boba Fett. You wrote a little quote on the side, and then you got one from the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
kind of return. That's actually like a big moment too. I know that's like his grand old return in the show.
Yeah,
the universe. Sorry.
Huge moment for me as just like a Star Wars fan or the Boba Fett fan, because I told Tamara Morrison this. I told him like straight up like, yo, man, ever since Return of the Jedi, I was telling everyone that I know that Boba Fett's going to return, and everyone's calling me delusional and crazy. And I'm like, look, man, like, I read the comics. I know what's going to happen. He's going to come back. It's Boba Fett. He's not going to die from the Sarlacc pit. And everyone's just calling me delusional, and I'm just reaching. But then he came back.
Finally.
And when I first saw him on screen in Mandalorian Season 2, I was like, honestly, like tears of joy, man. Honestly, like it was crazy. And I knew it was him from Mandalorian Season 1, just even when like Fennec was on the sands of Tatooine laid out like for dead, and you hear the boots walk up with the spurs. I was like, yo, that's Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, bro, how? Like, what are you talking about? It's just spurs on his boots. It could be anyone. No, I was like, no. That's Boba Fett.
This guy knew, man. You saw the vision. It is crazy, man, because like I've known you my whole life, and like my whole life you have said that. Like, yeah. I didn't ever really like be sad that Boba Fett was dead, because I was friends with you and you always told me that he would be coming back. So for me it was just a waiting game. So it was really cool to see him finally come back. I know obviously Tamara Morrison was Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones, so it was only right that he was the one that would take up the mantle of Boba Fett eventually, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. I know you see it up there. You met them both, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, wild. A little bit of Photoshop skills, man. Just had to to meet them both at the same time.
Yeah, it's actually cool that he was able to get Jango Fett there as well. So, I actually said to Mary Morrison too that the Book of Jango Fett, we need it, man.
We need it.
Yeah, it was. There's obviously been a lot of reports just sticking on to Mary Morrison that he might be back, might not be back for the Mandalorian, I guess, movie now, because it was supposed to be another season. Now they're making it a movie.
Yeah. So I've seen like a lot of like kind of clickbait articles and stuff about this. Kind of people like taking things out of proportion. So what he said, actually, I think it was Chicago Fan Expo, I believe, and he did like a panel there, and someone asked like, hey, like, are you showing back up for the Mandalorian, or are you getting your show again? He's like, I was supposed to show up in Mandalorian season 4, like that was already set in stone, but now that they've made it into a movie, I don't know what's happening.
Yep.
But that's really all he said. Like, he just said he's waiting on the call from Disney.
Literally.
But let's be real. Like, if he was supposed to be in season 4 of the show and they turn it into a movie, he's going to be in the movie. They just probably haven't filmed the scenes yet. Like, Pedro Pascal doesn't film his scenes for Mandalorian until the end of this year.
Okay.
So if Pedro Pascal hasn't even filmed his scenes yet, of course Tamara Morrison hasn't filmed his scenes for the Mandalorian movie. So it's going to happen. People were just, like, taking it out of proportion. Like, oh, he's never going to show back up as Boba Fett. Like, no, like... He's probably going to be in the movie.
Yeah, I really hope he is. I know I asked him about it too. He was kind of funny. He said that they had amnesia and they ran out of money. But hopefully that means he's in the films in some way, shape, or form. It was really cool for me to meet him as well because, like I said, like for my whole life, I know he's been like your guy. And I just like, it's impossible for me not to like Boba Fett because I'm friends with you. Even if I wanted to hate him, it's impossible. So
I don't think we'd be friends if you hated him.
Exactly, right? So like it was pretty cool for me. I told him, I'm like, yeah, man, I was a huge fan of you in Attack of the Clones. Obviously, no secret that I love the prequel movies, and like that's obviously one of my favorites. Got that nice photo posted up with him, and like I've mentioned this before too, but like now that you're here, you can finally confirm that. Did we not skip class to watch episode 2?
We watched episode 2 in class even, but yeah, we would skip class to watch Star Wars. We would watch Star Wars in class. We would skip class to play Lego Star Wars.
It's a true story, man.
No, for real.
Yeah.
The teacher hated us sometimes, but hey, man, we had to get through it somehow. That class sucked.
Yeah, amen to that. So it was cool to like finally meet someone on that scale. I would say that like, and I know we had this conversation too, like out of the last 3 fan expos that we've been to, I know you got a chance to meet Hayden Christensen last year. We signed up a Funko Pop for you and stuff like that. I would say Tamara Morrison was probably like, I guess only second to Hayden, and like I guess like on a grand scale. I don't think anyone really comes close to Tamara Morrison who's actually been there that we've seen. So it is pretty cool that like
people that were fans of, at least.
Yeah.
Like there are definitely like some other people that might be like bigger, like more wider known, but like we weren't really interested in seeing them. But especially in like Star Wars kind of like the fandom, I would say Tamara Morrison is huge. And then just for me personally, like even more than Hayden, I know for most people that's crazy to say because it's Anakin, but like Boba Fett is just, I don't know, like just literally my favorite character of all time.
What's so cool is that like, you might say that's crazy, but you're actually saying that to the one person that would 1000% agree. Eldin, we'll come to you just because you've been a little silent.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, how are you enjoying this talk so far?
It's good. Like you guys are living my dream. I think Anthony Daniels is one person I put on that list that I would love to meet. Like C-3PO is just fantastic in my opinion, and like he just is who he is.
Yeah, I don't want to make you feel too bad, but I also met Anthony Daniels.
See, there we go. Living my dream. I also think like I think we've been so spoiled for actors like just coming back. Like they do they do this thing. They think, okay, I did only 2 movies. No one really cares. And there's people like us who are like, no, like we care.
Yeah.
Like Boba Fett is probably one of my favorite characters. I have an original like Boba Fett toy from like my dad. That was like when I was a kid. The little action figures I had went up until I was like 12 were Star Wars, like OG Star Wars. So like, weird looking Chewbacca that didn't have any hair and he was just like a tall like creepy thing. It was him and Boba Fett and then Bosk. So like, and I love the bounty hunters. So for this it's fantastic, and like you can't see, but I'm wearing my Star Wars shirt today as well. So I have like a bunch of my actual wardrobe is Star Wars stuff, so it works out. But yeah, it's nice to see you guys actually have like this, just like the pictures of like, I'm gonna put one back up of like just like you talking to Tamura, and he's happy. Like that alone is like, if I could meet anybody, if that reaction was who I was talking to, that's fantastic, because that's somebody who's just as happy to meet you as you are to meet them.
Yeah.
And again, like for us, like, that's somebody who's like been a huge part. Like I'm 27, so I've been around. I watched all the OG Star Wars as a kid, probably like around 6 or 7, and then the newer stuff I started watching. I watched the Clone Wars movie in theaters, like the original cartoon. I went to Peterborough, the cinema there, my dad and I and my siblings, and that's when like McDonald's had those bobbleheads in like the little cars. So, like we were just Star Wars people, and like for me, like that kind of reaction where this like someone who's a huge fan is just like smiling like that alone is a great thing to see.
Yeah, man, like it was just such a cool experience overall. Like you said, man, like we're all just Star Wars fans at the end of the day, and it's like it's cool to have like that genuine interaction, whether it's like your favorite character, your favorite voice actor, it doesn't matter what it is. Like at the end of the day, we're all in the same community, and like I think when Star Wars is at its best, you really could like appreciate it, you know, when no one's like hating on content that they aren't giving us, they're hating on the content that we get. Like it could be kind of jarring because like, oh, should I say that I like this, should I shouldn't? But then like when you could have like a Star Wars discussion that's just only good vibes, it's like there's nothing better than that to me.
Yeah, I think like the fandom has gotten a little like nitpicky with a lot of the stuff that Disney does, and like I get it, they've messed up some stuff, like they're definitely not perfect, they've made some mistakes, but they've also given us like a lot of Star Wars content over the last like few years. You know, maybe not all of it's perfect, but we've had some really good stuff that we've never been able to see before, just like with the technology. Like even like in the original trilogy, like the Rancor is crazy, such a cool thing to see, but then seeing it in the Book of Boba Fett is like a totally different experience. Like,
yeah, literally,
it's jumping on buildings, breaking stuff, throwing like cars, such a cool thing to see. Like we would have never seen that if Disney didn't put it in the Book of Boba Fett. So you know, people have their issues with certain shows, but they've also done some good, and you know, we got to take the good with the bad, and people kind of just gotta like, I think they just kind of hop on the hate train.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's like, yeah, like you mentioned, people like to really hop on the train. So at times it is like kind of hard being a Star Wars fan, because kind of like what I said too, like it's kind of hard to know what to like and what not to like. You don't want to say something stupid where it's like, oh, I really enjoyed this. It's like, dude, you like that? It's like, oh, my bad, you know, like we're all just trying to have fun here with it. So it was cool to like see someone like Temuera Morrison and just like Eldin said, just have good vibes and like smiles and good talks to you. And like I said, for me, it was just cool to see you meet him. Like that probably meant more than me actually meeting him, to be honest. Like this is being your friend for all these years. I was like, oh my God, man, Tarren's finally gonna meet Temuera Morrison. So yeah.
It was a really cool experience. I mean, if anyone had bad vibes around Temuera Morrison, then there's something wrong with you, because he's just like such a cool guy, like such a nice person, and everything that he's done for Star Wars, like he's done it well. He's put his heart and soul into it. He loves everything that he does. He loves Jango Fett. He loves Boba Fett. Loves the characters. Loves the fans. So if you have a bad attitude around that, if you want to, you know, be upset about the Book of Boba Fett, whatever, then that's on you, man. Like he's such a chill guy.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on to now like the latter part of the show where we just discuss the character as a whole, I do want to ask you, putting you on the spot here. So there was a bit of a funny moment with someone at Fan Expo. Do you remember when we were standing in line and someone asked the guy how do I know Temuera Morrison? If you want to tell that story, you can.
It was honestly, it was shocking to me. Like we're standing in line and this one guy walks up, he's like, where do I know this guy from? Like, I don't really know who that is. Like, and this guy in line goes, oh, that's Aquaman's dad.
Just the straightest answer you've ever heard. There was no jokes, no satire.
The funny thing is just like 5 minutes before that, we were joking about that exact scenario.
Yeah.
And it actually happened. Like, we were like, imagine someone doesn't know who he is and someone says, yo, that's Aquaman's dad. And it literally happened in front of us. And that was hilarious.
Dude, we were crying.
Yeah, like, of all the things to know him for, is Aquaman's dad, bro.
It was so jokes because he then said to him, he's like, oh, he also played Boba Fett. It's like, what do you mean? I was like, nah, that is too funny. But yeah, that was definitely a funny moment for sure, because like you mentioned, we had just had that discussion.
Yeah.
And then he actually said, nah, man, that is Thomas Curry. I was like, that's too much, yo.
Aquaman's dad.
But yeah, so now just shifting gears though from Fan Expo. This is going to be fun. You know, this is where the fun begins, as they would say in Star Wars. Just want to have a full-on just conversation about the character Boba Fett with you guys. You know, you guys are the Boba Fett guys, in my opinion. You know, if I have a question about anything Star Wars, really, has come to both of y'all. So So this is a nice little discussion that we could have. So I've arranged a ton of photos of Boba Fett throughout history, from the mainstream stuff, some of the nichier things, and just overall stuff that I know you guys know a whole lot about. So that being said, Eldin, if you want to pull up just the first photo that we got.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, we'll just go all in order.
And I think at this time he was supposed to have like a Cockney accent. Have you seen like
Yeah,
the OG footage?
yeah. I've definitely I've heard the OG. A lot of people say like they like the OG voice actor more because they feel like he's giving like more kind of like attitude back to Vader. Like he has a little bit more like, I don't know what the word is, but he's not really.
He's got a backbone.
Yeah.
He's got a backbone.
But for me, like when I first watched the movie with my dad, I was like 6 years old, and it was Tamara Morrison. So that's all I know. That's all I really care about, you know.
Yeah, it's cool when you see like this image too. Like it's just so iconic in the sense of like when these movies come out. Obviously, no, this is from Episode 5. It's one of the greatest films ever made. But I think in the moment you don't really realize how long this image is gonna last. Like this to me is one of the coolest images of Darth Vader and Boba Fett. And to Eldon's point, it seems like Boba Fett is not backing down, and this is like the scariest guy in the whole galaxy at this point. So I do think that's pretty cool.
And these are like powerhouses in Star Wars. Like these three characters, Lando, we have a Stormtrooper too, Darth Vader, and Boba. These are some big characters that, like, what is Star Wars without Vader? What is Star Wars without Boba Fett? What is Star Wars without the Stormtroopers? And then like Billy D. Williams did so much. Like, he came back as Lando in the new movies. Like Lando has done so much, and like, where'd the Millennium Falcon come from? And like we see all this cool stuff. So like, all these characters are huge.
And now I guess just on that note too, with the OG stuff here, we could go to the next one too. I thought this was a cool photo that I got. Pretty iconic too, Boba Fett in his action pose. Would you guys agree that he's like the #1 bounty hunter in Star Wars?
Yeah, that's undisputed for me. For me, the way it is like Jango Fett was considered the #1 bounty hunter of his time until he died.
Yep.
And that's the only reason that Cad Bane becomes the next like big bounty hunter. So when everyone says like, oh, Cad Bane's the best bounty hunter, it's like, no, man, it's only because Jango Fett died. Like he was in his shadow for the whole time. And then Boba Fett came and took it back from him. You know,
yeah, he did. Got it back in blood, literally.
Literally, right?
Having him get shot in Book of Boba Fett was probably my favorite. Like, I think Cad Bane, the live action, was fantastic. Also, I fixed the camera, so this is me right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's the best you're gonna get, unfortunately. But I think you think of most bounty hunters, they all know Jango or Boba somehow.
Yeah.
Like, name one bounty hunter I think that doesn't know them, that hasn't interacted with them in some way, shape, or form. So that's the kind of cool thing about it.
I think what's like awesome too, when you look at just like the early photos of Boba Fett, like from those movies and whatnot, it's like cool that it literally inspired the whole like Mandalorian TV show that we have today.
It inspired the whole race.
Yeah.
Mandalorians wouldn't even exist without Boba Fett.
Yeah,
bro.
literally.
Like, he inspired a whole religion, a whole race, like a whole suit of armor, everything. Like, that wouldn't exist without this guy. So,
and it's like wild that like the Star Wars comeback, you could arguably say, started with the Mandalorian TV show, and then to your point, like we don't even get that without Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Like if Boba Fett was a character that just flopped that no one cared about, chances are we don't get the Mandalorian show. And I feel like that's like not an invalid take. Like I don't think anyone should dispute that. Whether it is Boba Fett or Jango Fett, mainly Boba Fett for this discussion, I just think that like he's such a key part of Star Wars, like we've all been saying so far, that like you really don't have certain things if you don't have like these films and this character.
Yeah.
And like what's wild too is that like in these days he didn't even speak a lot. Like I think he only had like 5 lines in one of the movies, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's so cool that like based on 5 lines he had like this cult following for years and years before we saw him again. So I know you guys are definitely happy that he came back eventually, which we'll get to. But who would you guys say is like Boba Fett's biggest like op, would you say? I know it's like a hard question. I've taught Eldin what op means, by the way. So.
Okay.
I'm hip with the lingo, as the kids say.
Okay.
Like I think Cad Bane, probably, especially if you've seen Clone Wars, because Cad Bane kind of stepped in as a father figure and then kind of threw him away.
Yeah.
and then I think like Black Chrysanthemum in Book of Boba Fett was, but I also like they've met before and they don't really talk about that.
They worked together for Jabba. So I wouldn't say Black Chrysanthemum. I definitely like Cad Bane is definitely like the biggest shout. I know like for most people it would just be Han Solo because
that guy in op.
Like that.
I
That's
hate
the one.
Han Solo.
But really like Han Solo is more just like a job to Boba. Like Boba doesn't like Han Solo. Like I'm gonna twist, he really doesn't like him. But like they don't really like fight that often. You know what I mean? Like Han Solo's more of a job. I would say, yeah, it's probably Cad Bane that they actually have like pure actual like disdain for each other. Like they just don't like each other.
Yeah, well, this will kind of segue to the next photo we got. My choice for his biggest odd.
Yeah, we forgot the biggest one.
Is the Sarlacc pit.
Okay.
This one have a little fun, you guys. So yeah, obviously, you know, I don't think now, but if you asked this question maybe like 10 years ago, there's no like Boba Fett without mention of the Sarlacc.
Cad Bane.
You know,
It was only the Sarlacc.
I think, like, you know, coming back to both of y'all, as like Boba Fett fans, like, what does the Sarlacc pit mean to y'all? Like, do you guys disdain it? Do you, like, I guess appreciate it? Like, when you see the Sarlacc pit, what goes on in your guys' mind? We'll go to Eldin first on this.
I guess, yeah. I don't know, man. Like, it's I'll keep the action camera on you guys. I just think, like, so as a kid, I used to go to like the Cameron Library and get those like Star Wars books that talk about the monsters and talk about like the aliens. And the Sarlacc to me was just such a cool thing. And in that book, I'm pretty sure it always showed Boba Fett like in the Sarlacc. So to me, I was always like, okay, this just killed one of the coolest characters to me. Whenever I played with my action figures, I was always like, no, he didn't die. He's still around. Like he's still kicking. And then reading the comics when he cuts his way out, I was like, okay, well, he's good then. But then the comics weren't canon, and I was like, well, what is canon to somebody? Like, what really is?
Yeah, what's your thoughts on the Sarlacc?
Yeah, just to bounce off that, like, canon can, you know, mean whatever you want, really, I guess. Like, they switch up canon all the time. They're like, oh, this isn't canon, now this is canon, this isn't canon. They're always switching it up. But yeah, he escapes the Sarlacc in the comics. I have those comics, actually. Really fun to read. And he actually falls back in the same Sarlacc pit and escapes it again, which is crazy. Yeah, he gets out and Han Solo shows back up and he's like all like disoriented from being in there, and yeah, he goes back in and escapes the second time. So I was like, yeah, like there's no way this guy died to that. In the comics, he escapes twice, bro. Like, for me, the Sarlacc, like, I kind of hated it growing up because I was like, bro, like. You can't just like throw Boba Fett in there. And really what it was is George was just trying to wrap up the trilogy, and like he wanted everything to kind of feel like it's like solved. So he kind of like rushed with the first half of the movie and like killed off Jabba, Boba, like so everything like that wouldn't have anything to do with the later half of the movie where they go to, you know, the Death Star and all that. So yeah, for me, like growing up, the Sarlacc, like I didn't really like it, but now that Boba Fett came back, and I mean, I love in the Book of Boba Fett when he just drops a seismic charge in there, like that's just hilarious.
Yeah, you know, for me, like the Sarlacc pit didn't really have any meaning if I wasn't talking to you, because it was always you telling me throughout the years, yo man, he's in that pit, but he's getting out, man, he will get out. So I always thought it was so funny. Like, obviously I understand technology, but like the way he dies back in the day, it's like so underwhelming. I'm like, dude, this guy just gets like shot down, falls, like does like a barrel roll into the Sarlacc. I'm like, that can't be it, right? And eventually, obviously, we know it wasn't, but that would have been a poor ending to Fett's legacy, as they say.
So, like, one of the most like disappointing things for me for the Book of Boba Fett was how they like failed to expand on that. And I feel like they were kind of like leaning towards it. Towards the beginning when he's actually talking to Fennec Shand when he first rescues her, and they're like chilling on the sand by a fireplace, and they're talking about Bib Fortuna.
Oh, I hate Bib Fortuna.
Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, for real. But he's like, he calls him I can't remember what he calls him, but something like a backstabber or something like that. Like he says something like about him that's like derogatory, and I really wanted them to like kind of flesh out that like Bib Fortuna like drugged him or something, because that's like been like a fan theory for a long time that like the reason like he was so like off of it that day was like he was drugged. Because Bib Fortuna, like his whole plan was to look for the best opportunity to overthrow Jabba. That was his plan from the start. Like the whole thing was he wanted to take over the territory, but he's a coward. So he had to do it in like a cowardly way.
Literally.
So he literally saw the perfect opportunity with a Jedi literally showing up. If anyone's gonna be able to kill Jabba the Hutt, it's a Jedi. You know, so he kind of saw this like whole storm going down, and yeah, I just think it was a bit disappointing in the Book of Boba Fett. I thought maybe they were gonna like kind of reveal that Bib Fortuna like drugged Boba Fett and kind of like set up this whole like scheme to take down Jabba.
Yeah.
And they didn't really expand on that. Maybe if we get a season 2, they could.
We definitely need a season 2.
Oh,
if you
for
ask
sure.
Me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Especially how the first one ended. Just on like that note, how do you leave us on like multiple cliffhangers and not give us a season 2?
Yeah.
So at the very least, we need, or just give us the Book of Jango Fett, which you both have said to me, it's just the Bounty Hunters
It's
video
just the
game.
Bounty Hunter video game, literally.
Like, yo, man, there is already a Book of Jango Fett.
Yeah, because if they were gonna make like a show about it, it would be what happens in that video game, probably.
It's just up to me to watch it.
Yeah,
Or
no,
play it.
you really should just watch like the clips online. Like,
Yeah.
it's
They
actually
released
really
it
good.
actually.
Yeah, they did.
Released
Eh?
it in like an HD version too.
Yeah,
so
they just
I'm not
now.
gonna pay $60 for it. But
Yeah, no.
But yeah, man. So moving on to another version of Boba Fett that I don't necessarily think is like underrated, because he's definitely as a person appreciated by the fans, but like just young Boba Fett from episode 2, you know, Daniel Logan's adaptation there. It was cool for me like growing up, because like I'm being friends with you, I know Boba Fett as like the bounty hunter, but not being as knowledgeable with the games and whatnot. This was my Boba Fett for a minute, I can't lie. And yeah, it's cool that like I like this photo too, because you see Tamara Morrison. And like I was explaining to someone recently, I gave them the whole lore of like Boba Fett and Jango Fett, and then I'm like, yeah, so this it's technically him, but it's really his son, you know. You don't really want to call him like a clone, so he like raised it, and then eventually he grows up to be Boba Fett. But it was pretty cool to see. Like, I didn't want to get the photo because it's actually kind of depressing, but like when young Boba Fett has Jango Fett's like helmet and like he gets his head chopped off, that was pretty sad. But yeah, for me, like young Boba Fett was always one of my favorite adaptations when I was growing up. Finally we're getting a Funko Pop of it as well.
Yeah,
it's been
really
like, I don't
cool.
know how that doesn't have more merch to it as well, but
Yeah.
I'm just glad that Daniel Logan, like I mentioned, is still appreciated in the community as well. Does a lot of cons and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
he has a full Boba Fett suit that he cosplays in like all the time, which is so cool. I got to meet him one day too.
Yeah.
Get him to sign the other side of my helmet. I told Tamara Morrison, like, I'm gonna meet Daniel Logan. I'm gonna get him to sign his helmet too. He's like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you definitely have to do that.
yeah, it's pretty peak. Eldin, what are your thoughts on the Daniel Logan era of Boba Fett?
I mean, again, like for me, Boba Fett was Boba Fett. Like and then seeing Django, I was like, oh, okay. And like again, Django lies to a Jedi. He's working for the Kaminoans. He is the perfect candidate to be a clone. And he's like, you know what? I want all this money, but I also want a son. Can you just make me a little me and don't age him? I'll take care of the whole thing. And it's like, okay. Now Django's playing dad. And like Django's history is crazy. Like he was a foundling. He was part of the Death Watch. I think it's all decanonized now, but then like I think it's Jaxus kills like whoever was the leader of the Death Watch time gets killed by somebody else, and that's this whole thing. And like it's just incredible to see this. And then you have young Boba, and he just like climbs in the Slave One and starts blasting a Jedi while they're fighting. And it's like this kid just does not care. He's like, and then seeing him in Clone Wars too, he's a menace.
Yeah.
Like he's like, Mace Windu, don't worry, I'll bomb the entire cruiser.
Yeah.
Like what can I do
Crazy.
to destroy this? He gets Bosk involved. He gets like all kinds of characters that are so big in other parts of like Star Wars. Like, Boba just had all the things to succeed, and Cad Bane, of course. Cad Bane was there too, but like Boba was a menace.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just been such like an iconic character from birth, you know. Like to Eldon's point, Django was like, "Yo, just give me a little me, and I'll make it a son," and then raise him from there. So it was really cool that like they were still able to give him like the same consistencies throughout, because like it would be kind of weird if he was like this happy-go-lucky kid that didn't really care about the war. Nah, man, this guy was like blasting Jedi from young. So
Yeah.
I always have appreciation for the Daniel Logan adaptation for sure, and hopefully, like you said, one day we're able to meet him. I hope
Yeah.
he comes to like Niagara Falls next year, like Fan
Yeah.
Expo. 'Cause
Anything really. I like
literally anything.
I just want to meet him super bad. He's really cool. But yeah, I will say, just like on the young Boba Fett kind of thing we're talking about, I will say like so many people, they just kind of like chalk it up to like, oh, he's just a clone, but people really don't like take in the fact that like he's like the only unaltered clone.
Yeah,
The
literally.
only one that like doesn't age fast, isn't more docile, because that's like a huge thing for the clones, is like they're more receptive to following orders because they have to be soldiers.
Yeah.
He's the only one that like they literally did nothing to, so he's Jango Fett. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so Jango Fett, best bounty hunter in the galaxy. Boba Fett, best bounty hunter in the galaxy. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So it's just, it's really cool. I got to meet him one day. I got to meet Daniel Logan.
Yeah, it would be pretty sick for sure. Now we're going to shift gears back to Tamara Morrison for a little bit as more recent stuff. As we couldn't talk about Boba Fett without talking about his return in The Mandalorian.
Okay, I'm just gonna cut you off there. When you hear the sputtering of the engine in this scene, and you and I heard that, and I was like, got chills because we had the tease with Cobb Vanth, and I hated Cobb Vanth immediately seeing it. I was like, that's not his armor. I'm like, why is he so skinny? Like, that's not Boba Fett. Like, who is this guy? He takes the helmet off. I'm like, oh, he's just some random dude. I could care less about this man.
I felt the same.
Yeah, I'm like, where is Boba? I'm like, get his helmet off, get his armor off, like, get out of here. And then in this scene, you hear the sputtering of the engine, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then in that same scene, you see him finally use the jetpack rocket. Because we haven't seen that. I don't think we've seen that. We didn't see that in the OG. We never see him fire the rocket. Shoots a TIE fighter down with it.
Yeah.
And then the whole, like, Slave One with the bombs and, like, the classic, like, the iconic calm before the storm, and then that crazy, like, it was so good. Like, this
guy's waiting
is what
for
I
this.
needed. Yeah, I needed this.
Yeah, man. Like, it was just so iconic to actually see him in this, like, kind of like to what Eldin said, not to say everything you just mentioned, but to see him do things we didn't see it in, like, with the modern technology and graphics, because, like, that does go a long way, and the effects, too. And, like, just seeing the armor all beat up, it was like, damn, bro, we finally have Boba Fett back. Obviously, I know this was a big moment for you. Take us through that. Like, what were you thinking during this?
So, like, after the first episode, when you kind of just see him, like, show up and he's watching the Mandalorian just ride off into the sunset, for the rest of the season, like, I was just like, dude, when's Boba Fett showing up? When's Boba Fett showing up? Took a few episodes, but then he finally does. Like Eldin mentioned, like, you hear the sound of the Slave One just kind of flying in, and then you see him up in the sky, and I'm like, man, I had goosebumps watching that. Like, it was actually insane to watch. And then he comes down, and he just goes crazy on the stormtroopers. So awesome to watch. And there's one thing for all, like, a lot of the new Star Wars fans, like, Mando is, like, what got them into Star Wars, so they're a little bit biased. I feel like I have no bias towards Boba Fett,
none at all,
but they're always, I hear people say, like, Mando, like, Din Djarin is, like, stronger than Boba Fett. This guy came in this episode and saved him, like, saved him. So him and Fennec were, like, pinned down. Boba Fett shows up with the armor. That's when he finally puts it on. I mean, he was destroying them even without the armor.
Yeah, literally.
Just with his gaffy stick, like, just going crazy, which was so cool. In the Boba Fett, like, documentary thing that they released after the show, they were talking about, like, Jon Favreau and Robert Rodriguez were talking about how they wanted to make the Mandalorian fight different than Boba Fett. They wanted to make sure that you can kind of, like, tell their fighting styles, like, apart.
Yeah.
Mando is a lot more, like, cool, calm, like, shooter kind of thing, and they were like, we want Boba Fett to be like a barbarian, like, just slaughtering people out there.
Yeah, amen.
It was just awesome to see, like.
Yeah, it was huge. I unfortunately, and you used to hag me for this, I know Eldin does too, like, I didn't watch those shows weekly when they were coming out. Probably it's still a big regret not, like, seeing the hype, like, not being involved, but, like, when I eventually watched it, I kind of knew it was coming, but I was still shocked, and that kind of shows the aura that he has, if you will. Like, no matter how cool Mando and Din Djarin is to me, because, like, he is one of my favorite characters, when you see them in the same show, in the same capacity, I think there's no debate, like, who's cooler, who's the better character. Like, I'll make the comparison too to like Spider-Man No Way Home. If you had, like, all your debates about, like, who was a good Spider-Man, who wasn't, when you get to see them all on the same screen, spoiler alert, it's cool to, like, digest what one does better, what one does worse. When you see those two on screen after, like, about a couple years of debates at this point, I would say, like, I probably wouldn't have known those debates, but it was definitely a discussion to be had of, like, who was a cooler character. When you see Boba Fett just come in and save Mando, it's like, ooh, this guy kind of got humbled, like, he is finally back. And then just gonna go straight into it next. He did get his own show, The Book of Boba Fett. One of I wouldn't necessarily say, but, like, probably one of the most, like, controversially received shows, because it does get a lot of flack to me for no valid reason. I really enjoyed this show, and I remember on my old show, shout out to Media Madness, it was just myself, Evan, and then my co-host at the time, Parker. I said that I enjoyed season 1 more than I enjoyed the latest season of Mando, and that was, like, the craziest thing in the world. And I was like, I don't really know how. Like, I thought that was a valid take for sure.
I totally agree. I enjoyed Book of Boba Fett season 1 more than season 3 of Mando and season 1 of Mando. I would say season 2 of Mando was, like, probably better. That was like just an outstanding season.
Yeah.
You know, Boba Fett and I mean Luke Skywalker at the end was just like crazy to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know, people like compare a show that's had 3 seasons to go versus a show that's had 1 season.
Yeah.
Like we haven't let the Book of Boba Fett really like flesh out its story, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully we get season 2. But yeah, I really like the show, man. I really feel like, especially online, some people can get like caught up in, you know, the hate train, and
Yeah.
like you know, one person will come up with like one criticism and it kind of just like snowballs into like
Exactly.
something way too crazy. Like I think it's the 3rd episode, that's when they have like the colorful speeder bikes, and they have like that really like slow chase scene. Like don't get me wrong, like that's not a great chase scene. It's not great to watch, but that doesn't make the show bad.
Yeah,
like,
literally.
it's like 5 minutes long. Maybe it's not like the best scene, but like it's 1 episode and it's like a portion of that episode.
Yeah,
And
out
I
of
feel
like an 8-episode series.
yeah, people get caught up in like, you know, trying to call things woke and all of this, and then they just like write off like a whole show. But really, like, it was actually a quality show with a lot of good Star Wars moments.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And you know, people just like want to hop on the train of hating it.
Yeah, before I ask Eldon his thoughts, one thing that I really appreciated was the character development of Boba Fett. I know you have that pop sign too. Like, you see him as like a Tusken Raider pretty much. Like, it was pretty cool to see him have an arc that wasn't traditional. Like, if going into the show, I wasn't expecting that. And I know I saw it later, so I didn't even watch it week by week, but like turning on my laptop and going on Disney and watching the episodes that we see the flashbacks, I was like, damn, I didn't even know Boba Fett had this lore to him. And I just thought it really added another like layer to the character that I didn't know we needed, if that makes sense. And then we always talk about this too. The back end of the show gave us some of the best like Star Wars content, period.
Yeah.
Like, we got like Mando was there. We obviously had like that finale, which was just amazing, to where like more or less like if you could just appreciate Star Wars for Star Wars and not compare it to like some crazy like you know, movie like The Godfather, let's say, like that people were doing, it's like it was really good.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you it's the greatest show of all time, but I'm also not gonna tell you that it wasn't a good Star Wars show. Like, I enjoyed it as a fan. So yeah, Eldon, what were your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett?
I mean, I think the moped chase scene was pretty good with the, like the dorky mayor, and like it's really stupid, but like we have Space Machete, we got a young Rancor, and like we got to see giant droids, we got the Hutt twins, so we get to see more Hutties.
Oh,
We
yeah.
haven't seen Hutt since Jabba,
Yeah.
and his son, which they never really mention ever again.
Yeah, I know.
Which was he's there
Strange.
somewhere. But like we got Black Chrysanthemum. We finally see
Amazing character.
the bad Wookiee.
Yeah.
Like we've always known Chewbacca's a good one, but now we see the bad Wookiee.
Yeah.
And like that also changed all of it, because all the comics with Chrysanthemum for a while were decanonized, and
Yeah.
then just once he's in there, okay, now they just change it all. You go to like Wikipedia, and it's from Legends to canon. It's like, okay, sweet. Like, it gave us so much extra stuff that I didn't think I needed. Like, having him back was fantastic. I like Fennec Shand. I liked seeing him with the Tuskens. I liked seeing him fight the Pikes. I liked seeing him go from, I'm just a simple man making my way through the galaxy, you know, I'm a bounty hunter, I just do what I have to these people saved me, now I'm going to try my best to save them. And then the Pikes wipe him out, and now he's like, okay, now I'm going to wipe you out. Then I'm going to try to do better for Tatooine. I've been on Tatooine, I want to do better. Well, that didn't work out. Let's try something else. And it's like you can see the progression. Like the Gamorrean guards were just also really stupid, but I think they were hilarious.
I like them.
Like, when they died, it sucked.
I was sad.
It was a really emotional scene. Like, they get pushed off a cliff. It's like, oh well, that's the end of them, I guess. But like, it did so much, in my opinion, for Star Wars. And like, yeah, people look at it, and like, also, wasn't that Ewan McGregor's daughter who was part of like that bike gang? Like,
Yep.
It
Yep.
added more characters. Like, then we have like the whole family of Ewan McGregor, like his wife, him, and his daughter have all now been in Star Wars. So that's like, we're doing something.
Yeah, definitely.
But like, it's so, and like this armor looked so good. Like the retooling to it, the darker, and like, yeah, Timur Merchant gained weight, but it looked great. Like, he's not like this like fit guy. He's like an older man, and they made it work. And it's like, also like, you got to see different sides of Tatooine we haven't seen. Like, I don't know. I think all the hate for it, I loved it. We saw Bacta tanks, which we haven't seen in a long time. We see like the deep-seated trauma of being like digested by a Sarlacc for like a year.
Yeah,
like
literally.
Sarlaccs take like 10 years to digest their food, so like he was in there for a while. And like you got to see like the different side. Like we've seen Tuskens, obviously. There's comics with like the Tusken Jedi and there's the Tusken like and his son, but we don't get to see that cool side of them where they actually get to be people instead of just like these raiders. So this was really cool to see, and it kind of ties into like his Maori heritage because like Tamora Morrison's from I'm pretty sure New Zealand, so obviously like it felt very like holistic in that sense of like everything he was doing felt like this kind of what he wanted to do for his country.
Amen to that. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I said on air that it was good. I liked it more than Mando, and I got like crucified. I wish I had Eldin or you there as some backup. But this was also at the same time when I was told that The Mandalorian as a whole is like the best Star Wars thing ever. And I was kind of just sitting there like, damn, like it sounds like I'm the stupid one because it's 2 against 1, but
really you're not.
Like I needed help, man. So I'm glad we could kind of do.
I'll Die on the Hill. Din is probably one of the worst actual fighters we've seen. Like they go to Mandalore and find a bunch of old men that are like just wearing like relic armor and are better at it than him.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, like that armor like saves him so much.
Yeah.
And I know like that's like the whole thing with the Mandalorians is like their armor is supposed to be like really good, but like he's not that great of a fighter. He gets destroyed like a lot, but that armor is just like insane.
It's
like it's like
overpowered,
pure Beskar. So he gets saved a lot. But yeah, I think I think season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett. Again, hopefully there's season 2, but I thought it was good. And you know, just going back to what Eldin was saying, like seeing the Tusken Raiders even, just in that kind of light, like seeing a lot more about them was so cool. Just as a Star Wars fan, you don't even have to be a Boba Fett fan. If you just like Star Wars, like learning about the Tusken Raiders and stuff is just cool to see. Cad Bane for the first time in live action, amazing.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker when they actually got the CGI right with his face, and seeing him like actually do stuff with a lightsaber, and Grogu, like I would say like the biggest issue for me with the show was like taking Boba Fett out of his own show.
Yeah.
But even like the content that was there instead was incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
That's some of the best Star Wars stuff we've ever seen.
Yeah, but because people online didn't like it, apparently it was horrible. But nah, it was
between Boba and Bo-Katan.
Oh
like,
yeah,
I've seen your face 1,000 times. Like that, there's so much, and like just the instant hatred of the two of them. Because like Boba knows her, and she knows Boba.
Yeah.
And it's just like I don't like you, and you don't like me. So,
yeah, it was just so great to watch. And like I'll never, with Star Wars especially, I'll never look at someone's opinion online. Like I'll have to watch it myself, and that's like the best example of it. One of the better shows that we've gotten. I would even say too, like in comparison to the Marvel shows that we got, like just in like this whole Disney Plus era, it's definitely on the like the better side. I will not say it's like one of the worst things that we've ever seen. It's probably right up there, like I would say just behind Kenobi for my personal rankings, like in terms of like enjoyment. And I don't think that's a bad take for all the reasons you guys mentioned.
Even Kenobi got hated on way too much. I just feel like when Disney does things with like legacy characters that have been in Star Wars, people have a lot more scrutiny to give, and you know that's why I feel like the Mandalorian can get away with certain things, but like the Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, like people want it to be like their perfect vision for those characters and how it's supposed to be. So it gets a little bit tough. But when they make like their own new characters, or even like a character that doesn't have that much lore or history, like even Andor, like the Andor show was very well received. Of course, it was a really good show, don't get me wrong, but like that's another character that doesn't have like a lot of people that know everything about him already and their own like predestined idea of what they should be.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a great take. Before honestly, just before we like close out this portion, it was an amazing show, and we definitely need season 2. I'll die on that hill. Before we wrap up the show, I did want to discuss more of like the hardcore versions of Boba Fett that the common fan won't necessarily see. Obviously, there's some comic panels there which I think are so iconic. You actually have shown me all of these on my own. So I think the lore that Boba Fett has in the comics, whether it's him getting black armor and calling himself Django, or like fighting Darth Vader, like there's a lot. Like, do you guys have any like favorite moments from comics that just stem right off when it comes to Boba Fett?
For me personally, it's not canon anymore, but the comic series where obviously like Boba Fett does fight Darth Vader. I can't remember what the planet is called, but it's on like this lava planet. It looks almost like Mustafar. It's like, it's a really strange story, if I'm being honest, but it's just really cool to see Boba Fett even pull out his own lightsaber in that comic series. He obviously doesn't keep it for long. Darth Vader is not happy that he has a lightsaber. but but it is cool like to just see Boba Fett with a green lightsaber, which is just so like super cool, and he fights Darth Vader and survives. Like that's just a crazy feat on its own. Obviously, you're not going to beat Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to be beating Darth Vader, but to fight Darth Vader and make it out alive is a really impressive thing to do.
Yeah, literally. Eldin?
I mean, I think I have a cop out. Like, I don't think I have a favorite one. That's the thing. It's like he's just always so cool to see. Like, I don't think there's ever a scene where you see or like a page in a comic where Boba isn't just doing something. He might not even be like the main character.
Yeah.
Like, he's there.
Yeah.
I think one of the ones I like the most is like him and Black Chrysanthemum like posted up together.
Yeah.
And like because they're going to hunt. I think it's Han Solo. I think it's Luke and then Han Solo and Chewie. So
Yep.
Chrysanthemum's taking Chewie and Han, and then Boba's going after Luke. And like it's just so cool to see him. I think I wouldn't. I really enjoy the comics. I have one with all of them, so it's like Forlom, Zuckuss, Dengar, Bosk,
Yep.
and Boba. Like it's cool to see them all actually be together.
Yeah.
Like I think before I loved Boba, Forlom was probably my favorite. Just like
Really?
a bad C-3PO with like a bug head. It was so cool. But
That's some real fandom right there.
yeah. And then like Zuckuss is cool too. Like I love all the characters. I went through this period of like one summer where I just went through and read almost every piece of media I could find on the main bounty hunters.
Yeah.
Because to me like they were so cool. Like Bosk was such a cool guy. Like I like reptiles, and like seeing this like weird like 7 foot tall lizard man who hunts Wookiees for fun. Like it was just so cool. So I think any comic with him in it and then with more bounty hunters in it by itself is just, for me, I have an omnibus of just like bounty hunter comics, and like I just love it. Like that is to me what Boba is. He's not just himself. He can work in a team, but he's also like great with whatever he does.
Yeah, the Dark Horse like bounty hunter comic series, like there's so many of them, and they're all just quality. I know like they have that run specifically, like the ones we were just looking at. They have that run specifically of like the Boba Fett specific series where he like the whole Han Solo like bringing him back to Jabba thing, which is just amazing. That's where he paints his armor black, calls himself Django, goes into the arena. That is like just such a standout series. But yeah, like Eldin said, like every comic that I've read of this guy, like he's just doing some cool stuff. Man.
Yeah,
like,
literally.
It's really fun stuff to read. And a lot of the like, I know people like to stick to the canon now, but a lot of the Legends ones, you see like a different side to Boba, which is just like super ruthless and just. I mean, you even see it in the Disney ones with this new bounty hunter comic series where he literally blows up Vance, like just oh yeah, you've run out of your use. To me, like just throws a thermal detonator at him. Like, just hilarious, man.
Oh man, yeah, that's too good for sure. But it's cool to like hear you guys tell me about comics, because again, this is more like the nichier part of the show, where like you guys definitely know more about it than I do. The next thing that I do want to bring up, I could actually discuss in great length, is Lego Star Wars. Would not be an episode of Star Wars without bringing this up. This is from the newer games. I just love this photo. I think we could all agree that like Boba Fett and Jango Fett in like the old Lego Star Wars games are like the coolest characters, especially for like the 2000s. They got their jetpacks, their blasters.
Yeah,
like
once you got jetpacks in Lego Star Wars, it changed everything.
Yeah.
yeah, literally. Like I said, this is from the newer one. I actually see this image until I looked it up, and I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah,
like
this was in the trailer for the game when they first like
Nice.
were releasing like the announcement. They put this exact like shot in it. It was super. I was so like hyped, and the fact that Daniel Logan actually came back to voice Boba Fett for this was super cool.
Yeah, it's insane. I love like how deep the lore and the history goes, because they could have gone anyone. Who cares? It's a Lego Star Wars game in 2023. I think it came out 2022. But bro, they got Daniel Logan, like
well,
insane.
Because for Jango Fett and like any other clones, they just did D. Bradley Baker, the guy who voiced him in the Clone Wars. But it's just so cool that they just got brought back like Daniel Logan. He has some cool voice lines. Yeah, like when I'm roaming around in this game, just in the open world, I'm always Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Like the jetpack is just fun to play with. Like why would I not have a jetpack?
Yeah, literally. Shifting gears to another game, and I know you guys were both hyped when this happened in
man.
Jedi Survivor. He made a little cameo
I
there.
got this spoiled
Cal
for me. So
I spoiled it for myself.
yeah, I was on like I think it was on Facebook, and it was like Boba Fett in Jedi Survivor. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And I was like, so then I had to look it up. Like, you have to. And I had one bounty hunter mission left. I'm like, okay, I have to do this now.
See, for me, like with this game, when it came out, it was buggy. I had it right from the jump. I couldn't complete this quest, so I had to spoil it for myself. I had no option. The game literally was broken, and I wasn't allowed to like finish my last bounty hunter, which was so frustrating. So I had to watch it for myself.
But having
online.
him like jetpack in,
yeah,
and then like the Kit Fisto-esque girl being like, "Oh, hey, Boba,
yeah.
you can help me collect this bounty," and he's like, "No, I'm here for you."
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
actually made a TikTok with this footage,
That's
and it's like
amazing.
my favorite thing that I've ever produced. It's so like it's just so cool.
You'll have to show me after this.
I
'cause, like,
will.
and then also this when he primes the blaster.
Yeah.
And then like it's and then they're kind of just like, okay, you go your way, I'll go my way.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, amen
I
to
think
that.
Boba Fett, like in Star Wars, is like the definition of aura.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of like another character that's just like pure aura on screen. Like especially
I'm
like
with you.
right from the jump.
Yeah.
Like just him on screen, you're like you already got chills, bro.
Even the photo we brought up earlier, you don't got to get it up again, but of him and Vader, it's like
Yeah.
Vader is Darth Vader, but we're still looking at Boba Fett to be
Yeah.
like, look at this guy's aura that he brings. Yeah, but just because we don't have a lot of time, but the last couple of ones here, we did bring it up earlier, but I always got to show love to the Clone Wars, seeing young Boba Fett in that show.
Absolute menace, Boba.
Yeah.
Just
That
look at the
episode
expression.
Is so good. That's when he just shows the other clones like you guys are not on my level. They're doing like the they're shooting like the training discs in space, and they're all the other clones are missing and stuff. This guy shows up, hits everyone first shot, and it was such a crazy just a crazy episode to watch, man. That's where he just showed like like you
Yeah.
guys are not the same as me. That's why he always tells everyone like you guys are not my brothers.
Yeah.
Like he separates himself from all the other clones. Like he knows that he's built different.
Yeah, amen to that. And finally, before we wrap it up, this is something that I feel like only you guys and a couple of people can appreciate.
The
Boba Fett
holiday
enjoys.
special.
Yeah. What do you guys? When you see this, does this mean anything to you? I can't get the words out because of how unserious the holiday special is. Eldin, we're
I
coming
think
to you.
any holiday special that StarArs puts out is just like miserable. We either get like Chewbacca's son or we get like something. Chewbacca's son looks terrifying. I mean,
Even this has aura, man.
Yeah,
like, look
like-
at the armor.
I think it's like the fact that you can't see his face that really does it for you. It's always a T.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Boba Fett.
It's just something.
But, like, yeah.
It is fun to see. I like it more just because it's a different kind of like armor. So like I even have like a Black Series figure of this armor, which is really cool. And I have a Funko Pop of it as well. But I just I don't know. The holiday special is just kind of garbage. But
Hey, man, it's peak.
it's cool to see still.
Yeah, man. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Just thank you guys so much for coming on, talking about Boba Fett. If there's anyone that's going to do it, it has to be the two of y'all. So I'm glad I was
you
able
don't
to.
have to convince me to talk about Boba.
Yeah, I was glad I was able to bring you guys on. Eldin, thanks again behind the scenes. I know you have to be here, but
do,
thank you for being here
I'm
and
happy I
checking.
was here for this. This
Really
has been great,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Before we go, we'll just pull up that final photo. Just the GOAT himself, man, sitting on the throne. This was a great episode, guys. So thank you guys so much for doing it.
Legendary.
That's all we got. Thank you guys so much for watching Screen Chat today. Don't forget you follow us on social media at DCSA Media Hub. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.